Daniel Dopp's players on the rise. We've got 5 names here, Daniel. Players that you believe are on the rise in terms of overall value, or you are drafting sooner. How are you defining on the rise?
These are players that are climbing up my rankings based on either I'm finally coming around to them, we've seen some things that happen, and there are clear paths to opportunities or targets in their offense. So I'm going to start, and we've mentioned a handful of these already, but not everyone listens or watches every single show. So we're going to say that.
We're in like day, I don't know, whatever, 20-something of the show.
I don't.
There's so many ways you can slice up the preseason.
Yeah.
So who starts?
I'm going to start with Rashee Rice.
Like it.
Obviously, we're in a situation where Field, and we got to say this first, we've been saying this every time, there is a legal situation that needs to play out. Right now, the NFL is not going to do anything until the legal situation plays out on that side, and then the NFL will do its own investigation. But because of all the things that we thought, Rice's ADP slipped huge this year. Was very, very late, still much later than it should be right now. ADP has him coming off the board as a 33rd wide receiver in the 9th round. If you wait until the 9th round and you're drafting today, you're not going to be able to get Rashee Rice. Just period, end of story. When you look at what he did last year, it was basically a tale of two halves. And we've talked about this a couple shows ago with Stefania. Wide receiver 27 as a rookie. But from weeks 12 to 17, Rice was wide receiver 4 in fantasy points. He had a 27.8% target share. He was top 7 in targets, receiving yards, and receptions. There is a lot to be able to love about what Rashee Rice can continue to do in this offense, in spite of the fact that they added Xavier Worthy, who we just talked about, and Hollywood Brown, who has been banged up. I love Rashee Rice, and the idea that he's coming off the board as a 33rd wide receiver is obnoxiously low. There is still a chance that if this situation does play out from a legal perspective, the NFL could suspend him at some point this season. But with where you're able to draft Rashee Rice right now, it is way too low. He is a guy that has climbed way up my boards. I'm taking Rashee Rice. I'm absolutely grabbing him at the dip. He's my wide receiver 24.
On the dip. Let me ask Mike a trivia question, because Mike has talked about how the Chiefs' offense is going to look a lot different this year. Mike, where did Rashee Rice rank amongst qualified players in average depth of target?
I believe he was last. Lowest or very close to it.
Okay. Do you have an idea of like what number that was?
Out of how many qualified?
I'm not going to give you that number.
I don't know, 85th out of 85.
229th.
Okay, so we're using everyone then. Out of all, you're using all players in all positions. Okay, I was thinking like qualified receivers, but fair enough, yes.
I think the qualifier
was very
minimum
low.
of 10 targets last year.
Okay, yeah. That's a lot.
Insane.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've talked about that. Like I worry about his ceiling a little bit just because that short range area. Although it's still the Chiefs' offense, so he could be a short area target and score. As I have projected 8 touchdowns. So I'm with you. If he's not suspended at any point this season, he is going to be a discount throughout the summer as his ADP dip from where we initially had him. But it's going to be a different offense there. I expect to bounce back. The Chiefs are going to be more vertical this year. Hollywood Brown will be back at some point. Xavier Worthy. It's going to be a better offense, a more fun offense. I think they rebound. Because remember, they were mid-pack in EPA last year.
Yeah.
They really did fall off. I think they fix it this year.
Yeah, Mahomes, that was the floor for Mahomes last year, finishing as QB12. We expect a lot more from him. All right, another guy that I have, and this unfortunately has to do with Jonathan Brooks, but Chuba Hubbard needs to climb up draft boards. I have raised him up a fair amount. Jonathan Brooks is obviously going to be the future of that backfield, but starting on the NFI list, going to miss at least the first 4 weeks. And then even once that happens, guys, still hasn't practiced with the team. Has not practiced with this team since he was drafted, even once he comes back. He's now got to get back to not just performance, but being able to understand, I've never played in the NFL. He's basically going to learn on the fly as he does this. Chuba Hubbard, I've said it earlier in the show, he was not sexy, but he had a bunch of volume. When Miles Sanders did not work out, he was very, very very heavily utilized. Once he took over as the starter, he was 5th in the NFL in touches and 14th in the NFL in scrimmage yards. 12.6 fantasy points per game. A guy that you can grab basically free coming off the board in the 16th round right now. You're going to have a starting running back for a number of weeks. Like I said, a bye week fill-in or a flex play if you need someone because someone else gets hurt. I think there's a lot of really good value on Chuba Hubbard, and he's, like I said, basically free in drafts.
Okay, well said. Yeah, not more to add. I agree.
Halo.
Excellent late-round flyer right now, and potential starter. Certainly a flex candidate right out of the gate the
Totally
first month
agree.
of the season.
Yep. Again, I did my week 1 and my week 2 through 7.
Oh, wow.
I left 18 off the board because I wanted to let you guys feel a little bit more adequate. But yeah, he was higher in my week 1 rankings than his current ADP would.
You're going to start on 2025 ranks later today then? Or?
Those are
Wow.
completed.
Wow.
Okay, they're done. Okay, good.
Actually, I'm working on my 2031 NFL draft rankings.
Wow. Chuba Hubbard right now, though, coming off the board as the 45th running back. 40
Too low.
running back. That's ridiculous. All right, another guy. Obviously, we talked about this yesterday too. Nick Chubb is going to start the season on the PUP list. Who have no idea when he is going to be able to be back with this team, which means Jerome Ford, who's being drafted after Nick Chubb, is great value. Again, another guy that wasn't super sexy, but when he's coming off the board in the 13th round last year, he averaged 12.4 fantasy points per game. He's basically the same thing that Chuba Hubbard was for the Panthers. And you know that you're going to be able to get him as a guy that you can play for at least the first 4 weeks, if not longer, because of that devastating knee injury that Nick Chubb had. I have him as my running back 33 and another guy that you can just have as a bye-week fill-in or flex that is almost free in fantasy drafts.
I hope people paid attention to that part that you just said. A bye-week fill-in or a flex play. I don't think he or Chuba Hubbard fits into the conventional mold of what we're talking about for league winners, right? I don't think the difference between your roster being a champion and not is like, hey, I snagged Chuba late or I snagged Jerome Ford in the 13th round.
Yep.
But that's not every draft pick has to be the player that defines your success rate, right? I think the next two might fit into this category quite a bit more in different ways. But yes, like his innings eaters running backs, Jerome Ford, Chuba Hubbard, both reasonable names to have on your board earlier than quite a bit than ADP.
Yeah, sometimes you need innings eaters at running back. It's just the nature of the position because we're picking apart Kyron Williams and his role and everything. Like, there's just not that many clear feature backs. There's only a few. So when you get down to like RB20 through, and then now keep in mind we're in week 8 or whatever, and there's a bunch of guys injured. Like, you're just like, man, if I can just get somebody who's getting 12 touches, I'll be happy at this point. It's just the nature of fantasy football. So absolutely, these guys could help you get off to a 3-1 or 4-0 start, and then that basically sends you to the playoffs. They're huge.
By the way, there are guys that I think it would be considered like unkind to call them innings eaters. But if you look at them closer, last season, they were basically that, with more upside than these two players.
Yes.
That are being drafted way earlier. Like Najee Harris. Was he an elite fantasy player last year?
No.
He's being drafted like 85 picks higher than these guys, which I get that. I understand why he's being drafted higher. But again, I guess because he was a first-round pick, he could have a monster season. But if I were to guess, like the more likely outcome for Najee, it's another solid, like push for 1,000 rushing yards, maybe push for 8 rushing touchdowns, maybe have some role in the passing game. But he has largely ceded that to Jalen Warren, which was the reason why, as a rookie, he was a fantasy super duper star, and now he has settled back into what I would say top of the innings eaters bracket
on a list. Yeah, I'm with you on that. The big difference, I think, for me with Najee Harris is like he's just going to have competition right out of the gate with Jalen Warren, whereas out of the gate for these two guys, they're the kind of the clear-cut number ones in both their offenses, in Jerome Ford and Chuba Hubbard. That could obviously change, as the guys come back.
Yeah, by the way, Cleveland did waive Deontay Foreman, or I guess release Deontay Foreman. We'll see if they bring him back as a vet or if they claim someone today. We'll see how that works out.
You can see both.
They're not done at running back. It's Pierre Strong is the 2, and that's it. So they'll add someone.
They have just 2 backs right now.
All right, I got 2 wide receivers, and these ones aren't tied to injuries. This is just me being a little bit higher on these guys than I have been throughout the offseason based on how things have worked out. Terry McLaurin. Can you tell me how many awful quarterbacks Terry McLaurin has had to endure in his NFL career?
Like 15.
Quite a few.
Well, quite a few. Double digit is what we can say for a fact. Now, obviously, we saw Jahan Dotson get traded to the Eagles, and I'm trying to figure out who else we're going to be throwing the ball to in Washington. I mean, if Jaden Daniels is locking onto someone, let's look at this. I think and Mike, please correct me. You just did the depth charts, updated everybody. The number 2 wide receiver is either going to be Luke McCaffrey, Olamide Zaccheaus, or Diami Brown.
Yeah, I think they're going to open the season with Diami Brown and then Zaccheaus as the 3, and then McCaffrey off the bench.
All personnel, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, John Bates, I guess, is the 2 right now. So I don't know. He'll be like worked in. I think they'll rotate those 2 guys as the 2 and 3. I don't think so though. We'll see. It's in Cliff Kingsbury, I assume. I mean, he used a lot of 3 and 4 wide sets in Arizona. I assume they're going to spread out the field like he normally does. I don't really understand them being like Brown and Zaccheaus are starting. That's crazy, right? It's definitely one of them things that I'm like, I don't know why they're happy with this group at receiver.
I wonder if Noah Brown goes to DC.
Somebody has.
Somebody has.
I really wanted him to come to Detroit. I loved him.
I don't know where he's going to go. Noah Brown cut yesterday. Surprising because they guaranteed
that was a
$3
surprise.
million this offseason, but they were so loaded in Houston to get the numbers part of it. I'll just say this. Terry McLaurin fits into the mold of like a guy that could be a league winner because I know he hasn't shown it in recent seasons, not because of anything related to himself, but like he has top 20 wide receiver upside. You're getting him as wide receiver 34.
Yep.
Right. But there are a few of those guys that also fit in that category. Like George Pickens is going right around wide receiver 30, and Amari Cooper, who we know probably not going to reach inside the top 10, but he could have a top 15 season. There's Chris Godwin. Like, there are good examples, but McLaurin, I think, deserves to be mentioned in that same regard.
I love McLaurin, especially Commanders have the third lowest win total from ESPN Bet, 6.5 wins, which to me is like, all right, you're probably going to have to throw the ball a lot. And if you're throwing the ball, based on the names that we just mentioned, Jaden Daniels, if I was him, which would be great, I would be locked into Terry McLaurin. I mean, no offense to any of the rest of these guys, but like he is the one pass catcher that I'm going to try to find more often than not.
Yeah, I think the reason he's not higher is he hasn't done it yet. He's been around for a while. He hasn't shown that ceiling yet, and he hasn't really had a lot of top-end players behind him already.
Fair.
And I know Daniels should be a better quarterback, but also he might run it 120, 130 times and take away some pass. Well, it's great for Daniels. Might not be as good for McLaurin, but also it should be a fast-paced offense, which will offset some of that. So I think he's properly ranked. I mean, I moved him up a couple spots after the Dotson trade, assuming the target share goes up a little bit, but I think he's properly ranked.
I've got him as wide receiver 29, which is the highest amongst all ESPN rankers. So just excited about what he's going to be able to do. All right, last one that I have here, and I've gone back and forth in this. We've talked about it a bunch, but it is Malik Neighbors. And it's kind of similar to the conversation that I just had. It's a little anecdotal with this offense. When you look at the backups here, you're talking Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, and Jalen Hyatt. Mike, you said, I don't know if he's going to have 10 targets a game, but he should absolutely average at least 8.5 his rookie season, if not more. And he's going to have those boom games where he does have 12, 14, 15 targets, I believe, in this offense. Malik Neighbors is a guy, and you said it, Field, earlier in the show, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, I think the gap is closer than what we see in their ADP right now. So Malik Neighbors is a guy that I moved up. I'm now the highest ESPN ranker on him at wide receiver 15. Mike, all the way down to
upstage me.
16.
Okay. Oh, all right. Yeah. I get aggressive, move him to 16. You have to upstage me. All right, that's cool.
Man, I remember. Do you guys remember on
Move
the
him to
show
14.
when, like, 2 weeks ago, I asked, I was like, is there a way to get Malik Neighbors into your top 20 for wide receivers? I expected both of you to be like, huh? And it turns out that both of you said yes, and you put your money where your mouth is.
Yep.
And now all three
I've drafted him in a number of leagues there as my low-end wide receiver, too.
And he's gonna go higher than ADP. I think his ADP will climb over the next week just because there is this buzz about him, and he's such a well-known commodity, even as a rookie player.
Yeah, and I don't take that lightly, by the way. I'm not for example, I saw someone today was kind of going around social where they were like, Kyron's the punt returner. I just moved him from RB 6 to 17 or something.
Was it an actual, that was an actual tweet?
Yes, someone tweeted they moved him, and he's kind of getting torched for it.
You want to name
obviously.
names?
No, I'm not going to name names. You can find it.
Use the internet.
At Daniel Dopp on Twitter?
Come on now. Hey, now.
It was.
I'm really surprised that Matthew said that, though. That's really surprising to me.
But anyway, generally I don't do that. Like I'm not going to aggressively move guys. Like I study all off season for a reason and get them in order. But sometimes, especially in large tiers like that, there's justification to move someone up like 5-6 spots. And in Neighbors' case, it made sense.
I feel like this is another situation where you just look at and I don't want to, this sounds disrespectful, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but like Malik Neighbors' skill set, and then there's like the rest of the Giants players in that offense that it's like he is just clearly the best offensive playmaker in this offense, even though we haven't seen him. Everything that we saw coming out of college, Daniel Jones should be locked in on him. So I moved him up a obviously big amount, and I've been drafting him there as well. Someone that I think is going to be awesome this year.
Good list right there.
Obviously not definitive. There's so many names we could add to that list.
For sure, yeah, but that's a good list.